Hello everyone and welcome to the Money Man. Now, the new generation of British banknotes is almost complete, and of course they are fully converting to polymer. We're just waiting for the final addition to that family of banknotes, which is the 50 polymer Bank of England note, and that's going to come sometime in the next 2 or 3 years. We're not specifically sure when. And there may be some delays because of this COVID nonsense. So we'll have to wait and see. So what I thought it'd be cool to do is review the final series of cotton paper notes issued by the Bank of England. I'm going to start off with the lowest denomination, of course, which is the £5 note. And here it is. Now, of course, being an Englishman, I used to take these banknotes for granted. However, now they've gone out of circulation and I no longer see British pounds on a day-to-day basis, I really like to look at them and examine them a little bit more, and they're really fascinating. Now, even though this is a low denomination banknote, it does get its own reflective seal on it, and you can see here we have Britannia. Now, Britannia is a great cultural icon of British identity, but she is also the logo of the Bank of England. So that's why she is featured prominently on a lot of banknotes, and you can see that as the security feature catches the light, you've got little fives that appear all the way around her, and there's sort of like an emblazoned sun behind her, which is really, really interesting, giving her a sort of like deity-like quality. Britannia is almost, you could call her a deity of British folklore as well. She's always depicted with her shield, which usually has the cross of St George on, or sometimes it has the Union flag imprinted on it. And yeah, so interesting. And you can see she's actually got this torch and the spear as well. So she's sort of like a warrior figure as well, but also an icon of British identity. So really, really nice to see her depicted on British banknotes. And of course you can see the reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II. Obviously she appears on all British banknotes, or I should say Bank of England banknotes. There are a lot of Scottish banknotes and Northern Irish banknotes. She does not appear on them because they are commercial banknotes, so a little bit different. But all the official Bank of England banknotes do carry the portrait of the reigning monarch, and you'll actually see that she makes up the watermark, which sits very nicely in the middle, just here. You can see right there. So very, very beautiful banknotes. There's lots of small detail going on with these patterns, and you can see that we've got £5 moving all the way through here and at the back here as well. So if we spin it around and look at the reverse, now really interesting images on the back of this £5 note, and I can tell you exactly what's going on here. Now this lady here is called Elizabeth Fry, and she was very prominent for a very important reason, one that is often overlooked actually. Now she's often referred to as Betsy Fry, and she was an English prison reformer and a social reformer, and she was actually a Quaker as well, and also she's known as a Christian philanthropist. But she was absolutely appalled by the state of British prisons, and she thought it was very unchristian in the way that prisoners were actually treated. Prisons in England and Britain were just absolutely appalling in the sort of the 19th century. They were really bad, and she sort of stepped in and said, this is unchristian to keep people like this. And so she embarked on a campaign of prison reform, which laid the foundations for successive prison services that are used to this day across the world, in the developed world. So she has been often referred to as the angel of prisons. So yeah, and we hear it every now and again that women are not represented on banknotes. It's just complete nonsense. You can see this woman is rightfully depicted on this this £5 note, and celebrated as she should be for the great work that she did. So there we go. And one of the interesting things about this banknote is that you've got this sort of like sun, which almost has these interesting rays that turn into like a wheel, and I'm not too sure what that is supposed to represent. It has something to do with industry, I imagine, but I don't know. But you do see the theme of industry represented in these banknotes quite heavily, and I'll move on to that theme in a moment. So that's the lowest denomination. So let's have a look at the next one, which is the £10 note. And here it is. And this is probably one of the most common banknotes that you would have seen when these were in circulation. Because most cash machines in the UK do not distribute £5 notes. The lowest denomination that you can get from most cash machines is actually the £10. So that's why this would have been probably the most common denomination to actually see in circulation. But you can see it's got this wonderful reflective quality right here, and again you've got Britannia. It's a slightly different style, but it is pretty much the same image. And again we do have the watermark of Queen Elizabeth II. You see right there. So she is the watermark in all of the banknotes that I'm going to show you today. So really, really nice. Again, there's not too much going on in terms of the sophistication of the imagery used, but there are lots of patterns that move through the banknote. Interesting that we've got these sort of like spiral-shaped shells. So yeah, really, really interesting. And you can see another one right there. Now, if we spin it around and look at the reverse, this is where we get the real cultural symbolism. Now, this is Charles Darwin. Now, you all probably know who Charles Darwin is, but if you do not, I can tell you right now. Now, Charles Darwin was a great English naturalist. He was a geologist and a biologist, and he is best known for his contributions to science and putting forward his theory of evolution. And obviously that theory basically says that all species descend from a common ancestor or a group of common ancestors. And obviously that theory is widely accepted as fact now. So that's why he's represented. And Charles Darwin is known all over the world. And again, you've got that sun depicted. Now, I don't know if it's supposed to represent like the light of knowledge or something like that. It's really, really interesting, but it is something, a theme that you see in a lot of British banknotes, and it's always eluded me as to the reason why. And here it almost makes up like the face of a compass as well. And because you've got this ship here, does it have something to do with navigation? There's a lot of subtle themes here, because you've got to remember that Charles Darwin did go out, he did go to places, and he did obviously examine things and create drawings and stuff like that when he was examining the wildlife. I believe that he went into places like Madagascar and the Galapagos Islands, if I'm correct. And you know, he studied the natural world out there, and that's where he started to develop, you know, his theories about evolution. So really, really interesting man, incredible life, and a great contributor to world science. So there we go. So the next one we have is, of course, the £20 note. Now, this only recently went out of circulation. Here it is. So many of you will remember this banknote, and it's got this wonderful reflective strip that moves through it. And you can see that we've actually got a gentleman depicted on the front here as well in that security strip. I will move on to who that is in a moment, but I love the colour scheme of this banknote. Now, the key difference here is that the watermark moves from the centre to the left side of the note, and you can see it's a very young depiction of Queen Elizabeth II, and you can actually see that we've forgone the little reflective depiction of Britannia and just replaced it with a printed one right here. And this looks much more similar to the Bank of England logo. In fact, it pretty much is the same thing, because it does say Bank of England. So more of a commercial representation of Britannia as opposed to a historical and cultural depiction of her. But you can see the Bank of England building in the background there, which is quite nice, and all these little 20s. So there's a lot going on in these banknotes. Really, really interesting. If we spin it around and look at the back, now here we have a gentleman who is very, very important indeed. Now, this guy, I believe, is Adam Smith. Oh, yeah, it says it right there. So Adam Smith. Now, I can tell you a little bit about Adam Smith. He was an economist, and he was very important because he basically, he was a key figure during the Scottish Enlightenment, and he's known as the father of economics, or the father of capitalism. And he was very, very good at developing new systems of labour division which increased productivity, particularly in manufacturing. and this is an interesting thing, there are a lot of Scotsmen that have given enormous contributions to, British innovation over the years, and especially when it comes to manufacturing and industrialization. They just seem to have a knack for it. And Adam Smith was one of those great Scotsmen who really, really contributed to not only the development of the United Kingdom of Great Britain, but to the modern world as we know it. You have to remember that Britain basically gave the world the Industrial Revolution, which has transformed humanity in ways that we cannot even perceive now. So, because things seem to move so fast. So these people like him, they made an enormous contribution to the progression of the human race. So very, very prominent gentleman featured, and you can see that also, I believe it's him represented in the reflective strip as well, with the wonderful pound sterling sign. It's a very, very nice banknote. Now the last one is still in circulation because it's yet to be replaced with a polymer, and of course it is the £50 note. And here it is. Now you seldom see these used in the UK, and people are very, very funny about taking them. So I went back to the UK at Christmas, and I tried to use one in KFC, and instantly the guy said, "Oh, sorry mate, I need to check if I can actually take this. I need to have a word with my manager." And it's like, it's legal tender, mate. It's just like, people are so funny about them. They have to check with their manager to see if they can actually accept it. Of course you can accept it. It's ridiculous. But people use them so infrequently that when you actually do go into a store and try and use these, they're just not used to seeing them, and it immediately makes them suspicious. Now, another reason why this banknote creates suspicion is because it's one of the most counterfeited banknotes that, historically speaking, of the current generation of British banknotes. So that's why there is a suspicion with businesses not wanting to take them. However, that being said, it's very, very easy to check whether it's a legitimate banknote or not. So yeah, you can see again Bank of England in the background. You can see that we've got that portrait of Queen Elizabeth II there with the £50 denomination. And I do apologise for the sound of the rain in the background. We've had some unbelievably atrocious weather in Hong Kong recently, and today is no different. But yeah, I love the colour scheme of this banknote. You guys know that I'm an absolute sucker for red banknotes, so this is definitely by far my favourite of the lot. And on the back we've got two very important gentlemen represented. Now we've got Matthew Boulton and we've got James Watt, and we've actually got a steam engine and Bolton's Soho factory. So again, if we're talking about contributions to not just England or Britain, but the world, humanity, these men are up there because they helped pioneer some of the machinery that brought us the Industrial Revolution, which changed humanity, again, in so many different ways, and really propelled us on a course that's going to take us either to absolute destruction or absolute greatness. We don't really know what's going to happen. I hope it's the latter, of course. But yeah, and we've got some quotes from them. So it says, "I sell here, sir, what all the world desires to have, power." So again, we're talking about, mechanization. And then you can see that obviously James Watt is saying, "I can think of nothing else but this machine." And talking of power, you can hear the power of nature in the background. A bit of a thunderstorm rolling in. But yeah, really, really beautiful banknotes. So you can see that Soho factory in the background there. And this wonderful machine and these two gentlemen of the Industrial Revolution. So, yeah. I think in modern discourse, people like this are quite forgotten. But you have to remember that we owe them so much. Whether you like modernity or not, you've got to say that the works of these great British people have just propelled humanity so much further. So I do really appreciate them personally. And obviously I'm a little bit biased being English, but we won't talk about that. So yeah, so what do you think about these glorious banknotes? I think they're really, really amazing. I love the new polymer series of British banknotes, particularly the Bank of England ones. But I am kind of sad that these cotton paper ones are no longer going to be around. So, let me know what you think about these ones. Do you find them interesting? Do you actually have them? Or You know, are you still looking out for these? Because they are becoming scarcer. They're not that easy to get hold of anymore. Anyway, I'll wrap up this video now before all hell breaks loose outside. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video. It's the Money Man signing out for now. Bye bye.